YouTube. Ready to go, man? Yeah. Let's fire it. We are live with YouTube Live. What is this? October the 12th. Everyone, hello out there. This is Through a Therapist's Eyes. If you're finding us for the first time on the platforms, I am Chris Gazdick. These two are Victoria and John, whom Victoria hasn't been with us for a
like 3 weeks to a month.
long time.
Yeah, it's been a while.
We've missed
Welcome
you.
back.
Thanks.
We've missed you. So if you're catching us for the first time, we do a YouTube Live on Thursdays from 6 o'clock or so, after 15, after 20, after.
I was about to say it's 25 after
Maybe
now.
25 after today. Anyway, this is a great way to get up with us, hang out with us, interact with us with the YouTube Live. You'll hear the version on Spotify and Apple iTunes coming up. We're going to be talking about controlling emotions. I guess, again, the group was telling me we've done this a little bit before, but Mr. Means All, Beat All, we listened to the director behind the scenes. Neil said it's okay because it's a good topic. So, can you control emotions? That's what we're going to be talking about.
I'm excited.
I think so.
Yeah.
This is a topic that annoys me, though. I'm not
Why?
going to lie. Because people think
Why
you
don't you
can't.
tell me more a little bit about that?
Yeah.
Because people think you can't, and come on, you can't. That's just.
They think you
we
can't
all know.
control your emotions,
Don't you think so? I think that's what people think.
that they can't.
Mm-hmm.
But
So
yet
in other
we get
words,
people in here every day that just say, I want to be able to control my emotions.
Right. Right. So we are ready to fire off, I think. Whenever you are, Neil.
Get her done.
Let's do it.
Get her done. Yeah.
Wait, let me start the YouTube on my thing real quick.
Are those polar bears
So
on
I'm
your
ready,
socks?
but not ready. These are not polar bears.
Are
They polar bears?
I think
they're polar
I
bears.
think they're polar bears.
They're cool socks, though, whatever they are.
Do you like wearing funky socks?
I do.
That's all my husband wore.
I
Pizza and beer socks yesterday.
I wear sock monkey
Real quick,
socks.
before we go live, what is this whole jeans thing, Victoria, anyway? You're like on him about jeans. I'm hearing you talk about, like, in the hallway in the middle of the therapy day, like, Victoria's screaming out about your jeans,
Okay,
John.
was
Like,
it
what is the
spring
deal
rain?
with jeans?
I just-
She was freaking out because
I
I'm
literally
usually
never see him. I've never seen him in jeans.
Yeah?
Ever.
this is the
And
second.
he wore jeans and like a button up. He looked nice. And
Yeah.
shoes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And a tie.
Okay.
And that was the
I
thing. That was my look back in the early 80s.
Okay.
And-
Well, yeah, everybody wore jeans. You know what I want now is a jean jacket.
Uh-huh.
I
Oh,
think that
come
would
on.
be cool, Neil.
My wife has a very good jean jacket.
You down? I think jean jackets are awesome. You're outvoted, Neil. Are they coming back? See, I need a jean jacket.
In the 70s, I had a Wrangler jean jacket.
That's awesome.
That's exactly what I had. And you know
Yeah.
why I loved my Wrangler? Because the Wrangler car in NASCAR, Darren Earnhardt Jr. was Wrangler. Uh-oh. Oh,
Yeah.
really?
I'm going to have
Yeah.
a second childhood. That's
John, you
wonderful.
stick around long enough, you know bell bottoms will come back too. You
Oh.
just wait.
Listen, my favorite song, Bell Bottom Blues.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
We have an observer, an AV guy, Jack's hanging out with us. You got to understand, like, John breaks out in song from
Bell
time to
Bottom
time.
Blues.
He just
Case in
he
point.
hits it.
Yeah.
Indeed. All right, let's fire it up, man. You guys, we are too off base.
We are.
Let's go. Hello, this is December, November,
October
October
12th.
October the 12th, 2023.
Three?
October the
Yes.
12th, 2023,
Are we
guys.
struggling today?
Hello, this is Through a
A
Therapist's
traditional
Eyes.
Columbus Day.
Is it really?
I don't know.
No.
Just
Traditional-
11?
We
Columbus
don't
Day?
talk about him anymore.
Okay, indigenous.
Why would we
Indigenous
not talk
peoples.
about indigenous? What?
We can talk about Indigenous Peoples Day.
All right, we're Victoria.
Okay.
We are
Sorry
way moving
about
on.
big
We are
thing.
way moving on from that. This is Through a Therapist's Eyes. I am Chris Gazdick, your host, with Mr. John Pope over there. How are you?
I am outstanding.
Good to see you, sir, and good to see you again, ma'am, Miss Victoria Pendergrass.
be
You
back.
have been missed. We've had a weird schedule, and
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I mean, when you have an 18-month-old.
Is it all about childcare?
Yeah.
But we didn't do a show last week, which we apologize. We
Oh
got
yeah,
all
and
out
that.
of whack.
That's why it's been a month.
We did the month in
Yeah.
review. You had the childcare deal. So
And then we didn't record last week.
been a little while since we've seen you.
Yep.
So we've missed
But
you.
I'm
Welcome
happy to
back.
be here.
We're going to be talking about, can you control your emotions? Similar that we've talked about. I guess the group was kind of telling me before, about 5-6 months ago. But it's a really good topic to kind of re-go through because, listen to these questions. They're really paramount to what we talk about with therapy, right? Like, what is really meant by control and what really are emotions anyway? And is there a difference between stopping emotions versus controlling emotions? And I think there's a lot of confusion that I hear people kind of get into with this topic. But anyway, little intro stuff. This is Through a Therapist's Eyes, where you get insights from a panel directly in your home or your car, but it is not delivery of therapy services in any way. Got the book number 2 kind of coming about, pretty cool on marriage. Totally early on that yet, but I just want to start talking about it, getting excited about it.
Are we looking at the 2024?
Oh yeah, it'll be definitely 2024. Yeah,
Okay.
the editor's got to do stuff with it. We got to get the cover and all that kind of stuff. But it is. I have in my possession like an edited version of the whole book, so that's
the
kind of
official
cool.
copy.
Not quite, but close. There's a lot to it. My gosh, John wants you to give us 5 stars, not 4 stars, right?
Exactly, 5 stars.
You really get upset about that. Have
Yes,
you ever
I
seen a
do.
4-star review?
Well, yeah, I've seen 4-star. I've seen 1 star, but not from you.
Okay, no,
It's
not
all
for us.
5-star.
Listen, we have a show sponsor, First Horizon Bank. I believe they should be called First Horizons Bank, Victoria, right? First Horizon Bank.
Horizon. Well, yeah, we're not going to have this conversation
Yeah,
again.
no,
They
okay.
can go back and listen to a previous episode to hear that.
Listen, they're an awesome bank, nice private personal feel. You go into their branches and you get a nice neighborhood, comforting hometown feel
Yeah.
to their bank. They got all kind of services. We found out that they are based in Memphis. Did I say that correct?
Oh, really?
Tennessee somewhere. Where's the?
I think Memphis.
I'm getting
I'm
it
not
wrong.
sure.
Was it
Where's-
Memphis? Neil's telling me, yeah. So Memphis, Tennessee is where they're headquartered. They got branches all throughout the union.
Mm-hmm.
So First Horizon, we love having them back on board. So this is the human emotional experience, which we do endeavor to figure out together. Let me start out with just a one-word answer, guys. John or Victoria, race to see who goes first.
Can you
Okay.
control your emotions?
She did it.
I'm supposed to ask that.
Oh,
I
John.
say, as a Vulcan,
As a Vulcan?
I think it's live long and
Right.
prosper.
Absolutely.
That yes, you can control your emotions, but you can regulate them.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a simple answer. Like,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Victoria,
Live long and prosper.
Who would say no?
who would say
Who
no?
would ever say no to this question? Seriously.
Like the 5-year-old that I see, and the 7-year-old, the 10-year-old.
Do adults not believe this belief? I tell you, this drives me nuts a little bit. I'm not going to lie. This drives me
I
nuts.
can tell you're a little agitated. Not
Wait.
well, maybe not agitated, but like worked up.
Am I worked up?
Wow.
I think
I
it's
might be worked
harder
up from
for
the
some
day,
people
not
to
from this
control their
topic, but
emotions.
That's another story. Anyway, sorry. What's that, John?
I think it's harder for some people to control their emotions for various reasons. This is, let's say, if a person has a head injury, that might make it very difficult or problematic. Let's say somebody has let's say, a congenital condition that might, neurological condition that might make it difficult.
Absolutely.
So-
Like, we're going to get into this a little bit for sure, and you got
Yeah.
some really good specifics that are there because there is biological reality to what we experience with emotions, but not a but, and we work to manage those things.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like a mic drop. Honestly, we're going to talk a lot about regulating our emotions today, but. It drives me nuts, Victoria, if I'm worked up about this topic at all. It's because our entire industry is designed around helping people with this. Yet there's the vast amount of people in a public, I would venture to guess, would agree with sentences and statements. And I was looking at quotes. I'm not going to have enough time to go through it with our content. At these cool quotes, these are famous people making all kinds of quotes about controlling your emotions, and it's that you can't, so to speak. And it's a farce. Like you manage them and regulate them. So
Yeah, I was gonna say it's kind of like how when I work with people on their like intrusive thoughts and things like that. You can't necessarily control the thought that comes into your brain, but you can control like what you do with the thought.
So how you mediate it.
Yeah. So I think I like equate that same thing to emotions. Like you might not be able to make yourself feel a certain type of way, but you can control like how you regulate it.
exactly, and we want to really get into that today. You know Barbara Brown, right?
Yes.
She says, "Good evening." We got to give a shout out to Miss
Hi,
Barbara
Grandma.
Brown on the YouTube live. All right, let's examine what really do we mean by control. So, I already used the word, so I guess I stole the thunder a little bit. But I mean, if you really think about controlling emotions, we're really kind of talking about regulating our emotions, right?
Emotional regulation.
Emotion regulation. You ever hear of this, Victoria?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I worked in an elementary school. Okay.
Give us a rundown, or
Well-
we're familiar with all of these things because we talk about these things all the time. I want to break them down a little bit tonight to simplistic terms, but what would you say if I ask you to kind of just give us a rundown on emotion regulation and what you know, dumb it down to the 7-year-old level for us all, right?
It's basically just having strategies or coping skills in place to manage like a feeling. So for example,
Yep.
if I were angry, I could punch a hole in this wall right here. Like that would communicate my anger. That would be,
I have observed my son doing this.
yes. But that would probably not be like the best choice in regulating. Like that would mean that I can't regulate it.
I
It's
tried
like,
to tell him
therefore-
that, yes.
But if I could maybe like, if John wasn't sitting here, if I could like punch the sofa instead of the wall, then I can I have a little bit, I
A
manage it a
Bobo
little
doll.
Bobo doll?
bit. Or then I mean it's more about like, I don't want to use the word control because that's what we're talking about, but
When I was back in the 70s and we did groups and in group therapy, we would have these batons.
Yep.
And if you got angry, you could use that.
ooh, like a damn it doll.
A
Yeah.
damn it doll.
Yes.
That's
Am I the only one in here that knows what a damn it doll is?
Well,
I
that's
mean,
like
I
yeah.
can assume by
It's
the
literally like
name.
a crazy looking. I keep one in my office, and it's got a little saying on it that when you can like you hit it and like till the stuffing comes out and you yell, "Damn it! Damn it! Damn it!"
That's a new play on things, Victoria. I just clipped in with you, John. Yes, the Bobo doll, the Bobo the clown, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Every kid had this stand-up thing,
Yeah.
and
You could
I would-
punch it.
Oh, I would go to town on the
Yeah,
the
and-
Bobo
Yeah, and it'd
clown.
pop right
Bobo
back
the-
up.
But it's not a doll; it's Bobo the clown, right?
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Look, there's a plethora of things that we do to manage the way that we feel. But how many times have you heard different expressions? You know, my buddy Adam on the show loves to tell me, Neil, you know what I'm going to say here, right? It is what it is, right? Isn't this what he says?
Gosh.
And what line did we add to this? That forevermore, when you hear that, you need to add the second line. So I'll do what I can do. So yes,
it
everyone,
is what it is. I can do what I can do.
So I'll do what I can do. Like, I don't want to hear the first line without the second part of the line. But, you feel what you feel. Emotions just happen. I'm going to be comfortably numb. I can't change what I feel. I just feel what I feel. Like, these are things that people actually literally believe. Are there other ones that I'm missing, guys? Like, have you heard these phrases and these statements that, that people will make?
I mean, no. I mean, yes, I've heard of them, but I can't think of any more.
I've got nothing.
You got nothing. How about ones that indicate we can control what we can control? Do you got any that come to mind for that?
Well, you see, they're not as pithy.
They're not as pithy?
No.
Yeah.
In other words, we do much better as I can't help myself, or Yeah, and or you just say that's just the way I am.
Oh, that's a
Right,
good one.
Yeah,
That's just the way I am.
yeah,
You have to accept me or not. These things support a disempowered state. And
exactly.
we really don't want to subscribe to that, guys. I mean, I know these things are challenging. I know these things are hard, but we really don't want to subscribe to the disempowered state of I'm out of control, I'm out of influence. It just kind of washes over me. Like it's just not true. I don't want to go too far into it, but because I know we can go into Adlerian psychology pretty strong, but let's understand what it is that we're really talking about. If we were to try to needle in what really are emotions, let's spend a little segment on that.
What are
So you want to second that emotion?
Yes.
Okay.
What do you mean?
I was just another song reference.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know that song.
Well,
I
that's
usually
a
can
that's a Motown song.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I want to second the emotion.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, what in terms of what is emotion? I think it's obviously very natural. We all have them. I think it's a process of learning how to live and interact with other people, and so you don't have a value level saying emotions are bad, and there's a certain bad emotion or there's a good emotion. Emotions are what we are. We all have them, except we need to learn how to regulate them.
I was going to say, actually, it's an interesting question, right? Are they bad? Are they good? Are there some emotions that are good? Are there some emotions that are bad? Like, how do we qualify?
Nope.
No. What do you mean? Go.
I mean, when I work with kids, I don't teach them that there are good and bad emotions. We teach that there are like big feelings and small feelings, but not good and bad.
Right. I actually
Feelings.
Wow. I know that song reference.
yeah, you do that.
All right, we got to put you on a song quota, man. What we got, like
Seriously.
maybe four
Okay, I'm
shows?
up.
Okay,
Well,
like
it's
some
been,
of these
like,
books that I read have like a playlist at the beginning of the book for the songs that are mentioned throughout the book. We need to do that, but for John,
playlist.
like a playlist for the songs
song
that John
playlist, yes.
sings. Like,
Well, I
each
think it just comes to you
episode.
naturally, so I don't know that we could do a list. But I don't, like I said before, I don't want to go too far into it. But yes, they're neither bad, they're not good. They just are. And there's a whole brand of psychology we talked about on the show. Adlerian psychology. It was actually because I went to an Adlerian psychology conference and I was like all, like Adlerianed out, right? But it was really, really cool because that really gets at the time just after Freud when psychology was really kind of becoming a boon. And Alfred Adler did a great job of helping us all to really learn that emotions are just here to guide us.
And he had such an emphasis on the social contract, social interactions in families and groups and schools and work, business, everyday lives with friendships. And so there's that. So there's that aspect, I think, naturally for regulation.
Right. I think what just came to me is an awesome phrase, I think. Emotions are neither good, neither bad. Emotions are simply necessary.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good way. I think that's a truth. And
Well, there are humanity. There are
part of
humanness.
our human interactional
Yeah.
reality, right? Like
Yeah.
if you're anxious, you got to look at in Adlerian psychology, what is that anxiety directing for you? What is it creating for you? And what do you need to then take into action to do, right? Like if you're depressed, there's some messaging that's going on that your emotional system is really geared to teach you and guide you. Like we would be incapable of interacting in that social construct that you expressed, John, without emotions, right?
Right.
That would be virtually impossible. And that's a neat thought. I mean, it's part of what gives us our humanity and interaction. So neither good, neither bad, but necessary. I like to think about the chemical reality with emotions. What do y'all really think about neurology much, or
I have My Chemical Romance.
is that another song I'm going to shoot?
No, it's a
I'm
band.
going to
It's
shoot
a band.
you if it is right now. It's a band?
It's a band.
It's a band. Really cool music. So-
John, you're cut off, man.
Okay.
You're cut off.
No
today
more.
from-
No more.
from
No
music.
moss.
Well, all right, now I've lost my thought.
No,
train
no,
of-
You're
you're-
talking about the
you're
chemical. Do we think
neurochemical.
about?
Yes.
Do we think about like the
Neurological.
neurological side of it?
So do you?
Sorry, no.
Do you not?
I do.
Yeah, I do a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I do a lot. Describe how you use that in your work, John. I'm really
Well,
curious. Right?
for
because-
example, I have a client which I think has a very aptly named disorder. It's IED, intermittent explosive disorder.
Oh, that's fun.
fun.
It is
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, and
Sad
he
that
came.
we both had that reaction,
It is,
Victoria. but-
yeah.
He came to my
Well, you don't
office.
get it a lot, so
No, he's classic. But his knuckles were absolutely skinned and he got started and he pounded the wall like you talked about.
like in your office.
No.
Oh,
No, I had another client who broke her iPhone, threw it against the wall.
Nice, yeah.
So that was very expensive, and
Yes.
he had this, and I think you see it more often in men. I think a lot more in men.
With
but,
the intermittent explosive,
yeah.
that's
yeah.
Yeah.
You don't
that's
see
interesting.
too many women.
But there's a biological, a biochemical aspect to it, and
Right.
and so for some reason there seems to be a flooding or just that there's a blind rage, and so they're not able to stop, and there's literal blackouts in some cases, and doesn't remember what happened. And
I've always been, honestly, I know this is going to take us on a little detour, and I apologize for that, but I'm curious what either of you experience with this. It has been always a fascination of mine, and I've never understood the experience with anger.
Mhm.
And like you just said, you hear the word blind rage, and I've heard people describing seeing red.
literally.
Literally,
and
yeah.
it is. It's literal. I've had these conversations. It's a literal experience where you're seeing red and visually
That's in
blanking out.
That is the
with
brain doing that. I'm sorry.
So go ahead. Yeah.
No, go-
'cause
I'm-
I'm fascinated. Go.
Yeah. Well, it's in other words, that's occurring a process in the brain. It's not something that the person sees out in front of themselves, so that presents that way. But it's like a flooding. It's like, for example, if you get a migraine headache, then some people lose half of their visual field,
Right.
and like a skim or like a curtain going down, and so everything becomes very dim. It becomes derealized, and a person dissociates at
Right.
that point. So there's a neurological process. I'm not quite sure where it happens, or if it
But
happens.
see, that's
in
what
certain
I want
areas.
to get at. That's what
I'm wondering if it's in the limbic system,
Yeah.
and I certainly think that there's a cutoff on the frontal lobes where everything is kicked back into more of a primitive brain, which isn't primitive really. It's evolutionarily it's been around for 500 million years, but
Right. The limbic system or our
Limbic,
brain
right,
emotional system.
right.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm getting at. We need a great neurologist that we may have a beat on to talk about that, because I'm fascinated at the
well, I'd love to get a neurologist.
right, because it's fascinating cutting edge stuff where I have suspected, and you were getting at that, and that's what I want, the mechanisms of, like, it's just fascinating to me how people can cut off memory and see physical change in their environment all because of a level of anger, and it's an intense emotion. And actually, it's probably not even related to just anger. It's much more a feed in of a bunch of stuff. Because Therapy 101 tells us anger is actually the result of a whole lot of other things kind of going on. But it's like basically feels like to me the brain is overtaxed. It's like the car engine.
So it
is
needs to be
overheated.
rebooted.
It just needs reboot. The
Yeah.
computer, the blue screen of death. You ever hear of that?
Okay. Oh yeah.
That's what's happening. Like when people are in this state, I feel like. But I've
Windows
never,
95.
huh?
Windows 95.
Yes, Windows 95, the blue screen of death. That's not a band, Victoria, or a song.
I'm not that young. Well, I am, but I know what you're talking about.
So that's cool. Sorry for the little detour there, but
I think that might be a topic that you might want to
Explore further.
explore further.
I would love for us to explore it. It's just honestly, I don't think many people really know it or understand it.
Well, I was about to say, are there really even? I mean, this would be talked about then, but I wonder if there's even really studies that you can do to like
well, I think we're
track
learning
and
about
map
it.
that.
Yeah, I think we're learning about it. Honestly, I think I've shared on the show before. My developing belief is that this whole process that we're touching basis with right now
Yeah.
has a lot to do with the whole the whole endocrine system with the hormones and the body's very detailed chemical interaction reality. I mean, I think there's so much going into that it just overloads the emotional system.
And I think that in a way it's almost like a seizure.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, in other words, the brain misfires.
Like when you get angry.
Right.
is
When
what
you
you're
get
saying.
so angry, well, it's the blind rage. It's not like
okay, not
You-
punch
like-
a hole in the wall, but like blackout blind rage.
okay, when you get in an argument with your spouse.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, you get really angry.
Yeah. But I don't
occur-
see red.
You don't see red.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
what
I'm
I
able-
want to
yeah, I'm
suggest,
able to, like,
Victoria.
calm
This
myself
is
down.
a level of emotional experience that I would venture to guess no one in this room has ever experienced.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever been that angry.
Like, yeah, this is a unique kind of experience. This is a unique reality. Well, evidently, maybe one
There
of us
might be
have.
one person.
but it's very, very rare to have
Yeah.
that experience. So, it is.
Well, I mean,
It's
like the
seizure.
books I read, a lot of the male characters, typically not the female, but the male characters talk a lot about like that. That's the phrase they use a lot. Is like, I see red. Like all I saw was red, and like
That's not simply red.
yeah.
Well, it's dramatized, Victoria.
Well,
I mean,
that
it's
is,
not,
yes.
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 Your storylines might maybe have a theme.
So those
It's a lot
bodice
of
rippers.
fiction.
Yeah.
They might have a theme.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on a little bit from where are we? What are our emotions? Let's get back on track. I love this cool thing from Psychology Today. I thought it was a pretty nice way of looking at, they had a cool quote. Emotions are not just feelings, but the meaning we make from a given situation.
Oh, yes,
Right? You like that, John?
I do.
What's your brain do with that?
Well, that's something that you could even reflect back on. When you make meaning with something, you're actually reflecting on it. So that's how I'm interpreting it.
I think so. Go a
Yeah.
little further with that.
Okay. You reflect back on let's say you might be feeling something. Let's say you feel left out, okay, and you feel lonely.
Right.
Okay. You have to, it's only upon reflection that you really understand how lonely you were feeling at that time or how separated you were from another person or somebody or being left out. You go off somewhere and you sulk.
Okay.
Okay. Am I going in the right?
No, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm
I think I'm trying to go back to when I was Victoria's age, and
Right.
And I was a single guy, and I got turned down in terms
Right.
for a date or something like that, and it hurt terribly. And but I didn't just think about it at that moment. I didn't just start suddenly feeling, well, okay, everything's going to be all right. I had to go into a process where I reflected on it, and sometimes I got feeling worse.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. and I had to actually catch myself and bring myself out of that.
So let me tell you what's interesting to
Am I off the
me
base
with that.
on that?
No, not at all, not at all. But my brain's doing a little journey, and I want to see what you guys think about it when I'm listening to you, because as I'm listening to you describe that, you're saying there's a reflection experience that goes into what you were experiencing
Yeah.
with your emotion, but then I heard you say also it might be more intense, or it changes and it moves with you depending upon what and how you're reflecting.
Oh, you got
on
it.
the event, right? Yeah.
Right. I know you explained it better than I understood it at the
Well,
time.
but here's what my brain is doing with that. So, interestingly enough, I really feel as though emotions are really 100% like only in the now experience. That's why mindfulness is so important. You know, when you have intense emotions, you get into the moment, and it's a new moment, and that new moment is calmer than the last moment, and you stay with it and you ride down. There's a lot to that, but so what I'm trying to say is, interestingly, that emotions are 100% in the real time only. They're not in the past, and they're not in the future. That's what I've kind of come to believe or see.
So if you remember an emotion, it becomes real at that moment. No?
Say again?
So if you remember something that
Right.
happened, it actually becomes now.
Now.
And you, by observing it,
Right.
you've changed some things.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the whole process of like healing when you think
Right.
about something in the past and you used to be sad or angry about it, but then when you think about it now, you have peace or you have joy or you have contentment or whatever.
You are actually managing it.
Yeah.
But you can manage
You're
it
regulating it.
You're regulating it, but you're managing it and regulating it in such a way that honestly, you can do yourself harm by, as you said, John, you reflected and you were heartbroken even more and more. And it was like, oh.
I fell down that burning ring of fire. I went down, down, down.
John, you just went over your quota, brother. But I love that one.
But I didn't sing.
But I love that one. That one was
Oh,
good.
that was great.
And isn't that the truth though? Isn't that the truth though? Like we really do, reflect, and what you conjure up. Ooh, how about that, right? What you conjure
I
up
like that.
in your experience right now is actually what you're doing. We really can be our own worst enemy.
Well, I
when we're
mean, yeah,
dealing
like
with
if
this.
you keep thinking about a situation, kind of like what John brought up, and you continue to be angry about it, and then every time you think about it, that anger only builds, and
Comes
you're
back.
like self-sabotaging yourself. But
Self-sabotaging is a word.
yeah,
Right? That's something that we really are guilty of. Look, this was cool in the Psychology Today thing. They have a cool process that they went through. They looked at feelings, and that's like subjective feelings. I feel fill in the blank, right? I feel blamed, or I feel scared, or I feel happy, right? And then you have appraisals. Those are what you were talking about, John, the thought patterns, right? That add to what you are feeling. So I am under threat. What you reflect on, what you envision, what you conjure up, you can actually create.
Now, these are
new
some of the
emotions.
things that happen with treating PTSD.
100%.
And cognitive processing therapy works through this.
Right.
And actually gives some people agency so that they can actually stop their descent.
Gives people agency. What's that expression mean?
Gives them. Oh, I'm sorry. Give people the ability to make decisions to regulate
Right.
their emotions
Right.
and their feelings.
Love
And-
it. That's what
Okay.
we're all about. Again, going back to our original question, can you control your emotions with this episode? Like, I hope you're really getting the idea. Like, of course you can. It's not easy, but it absolutely is within your realm. So let's look at this real quick again, like feelings and then appraisals, the thought patterns that you have. But then you have expressions, facial, body expressions, like being wide open with your eyes, or being really sound and sunken in with your mouth, and facial. Like we have facial expressions that follow the appraisals, that follow the feelings. And then we have actions. The way that Adler would say, behavior comes from what our emotions are telling us from, and it's like all connected into that. And then you have physical changes, literally symptom relief, symptom building. We could go either way with
I
that.
call them body warning signs in mine, like with the kids.
Okay, what do you mean?
Excuse me.
Body warning signs.
Body warning signs. Yeah, it's just signs that your body, nonverbal signs that your body gives you that you're feeling a certain way.
So you give a child
me.
agency. That child. So the body warning signs is a way of giving the child the ability to
Name the emotion.
To name the emotion.
Yeah.
And that's why it's important to have a large vocabulary for your emotions to describe the nuances.
Well, yeah, because as I also teach my kids and adults, there's like differences between feeling frustrated versus feeling angry versus feeling annoyed versus feeling enraged versus feeling furious. Like,
and notice
all
she
those
has
are
all
like,
those negative words.
They are.
Not-
Yes,
We could,
they're
But-
not negative words.
But I mean, like those 5, I just listed 5. Those are all different, and so yes, building on what John's saying, when you have a bigger vocabulary of feelings than you're actually. But yeah, so the non-body warning signs, whatever you want to call them, that's what I call them. But like, you feel butterflies in your stomach when you're anxious or nervous, or you cry when you're sad, or your foot shakes when you're like whatever, or you know, and anxious, and or you smile when you're happy. Like,
it's a lot to it.
yeah.
I was just thinking about Victoria,
Why?
our conversation a while ago. Do you remember when we were talking about that? And I was like, "Yep, get rid of the feelings chart."
Yes, it's
You remember that?
Yes, it's underneath my.
Do you still have it?
It's underneath my couch. I pulled it out for the first time today with a new client, but no, I don't use it. I use the feelings. I have a feelings wheel that people can use if they want it, but it's not up. Like it's on a shelf. They can't necessarily.
What is
see
the
it.
thing about the feeling chart?
Yeah, let's pull John into this, right? So I was at a conference one day, John, and it was stunning to me, and I was taking pleasure in giving Victoria the same experience that I had, and it really fits into our conversation here, right? Because they made the comment, you know, and they held it up, and they's like, "How many of you have this feelings chart?" You know what it is. We've got the long list of 70 per page, 2 or 3 pages
You could
of feelings.
see it at every clinic.
Right.
There,
He said, "Throw it away, John.
really?
Throw it away." And I know he caught my attention as well. I'm like,
Okay, mine's like
okay.
laminated and everything.
I-
so I'm just-
I know, right?
Ours
Well,
was laminated.
He went in to talk about, and it was really helpful for me at the time, and I still carry through with that today, that it is overwhelming for people because generally, and he's right, all of his people, and I've thought about it since, look, the people that I have in therapy, at whatever age you are, they're on the happy, glad, sad, mad level. That's
or
what
the
they're trying to figure
good.
out.
This drives me insane.
Right?
When people say check in
Well,
as good, I'm like, what the
Well,
heck does that mean?
Yeah, well, that's an avoidant answer. But really, it's I'm happy, I'm mad, I am sad, or I'm glad. Those are like the primary colors.
Wouldn't happy
that
and
people
glad
are
be the same
experiencing.
Do
thing?
you ask to describe what does that look like?
Yeah.
Of course.
And
I ask all the questions of what does things mean to you? What does that look like for you? Can you say more about that? Open-ended questions. And John, I find people struggle greatly.
It
with
is,
this.
yeah. I find that it's because, in my personal experience, it's from like the lack of knowledge of other feelings.
Well, yeah,
And maybe that's because I work with kids and like teenagers and young adults and whatnot. Maybe that's why.
Well, I don't think that's why. I think that people struggle to think about with any level of depth what it is that the emotion is there. We're just, here's the key word, experiencing it. It's just an experience.
it could be scary though if I would feel like, oh, well, point out how you feel on this chart, and then me personally,
Right.
my natural go-to would be, I'm really on spot.
Right.
I can't.
And
I freeze up.
I have no ability. Like, I don't know what all
Okay,
this
are
is.
we talking about like a feelings chart that just has the list of names? Because my feelings chart that
No,
I
we are
have
not.
has
Yeah,
is colored,
stop.
and it's got pictures, and it's got the word, and it's got the definition of the word.
We do not need
It's
the
a lot.
emojis. It's a lot.
It is a lot.
I
Now,
think
I will
that's
say
the
it is.
point.
It can be overwhelming. Like if you walk into my office and that, like, which is
That's-
partly why I took it down too, is that. But I mean, but then it's interesting because I also had adult clients who would use it.
Oh, I know.
Like, and
I
so
know.
it's kind of like you get a half and half. Like you get half the people who are like, yeah, this is great. This helps me pick out a word that's not just your basic happy, sad, mad, glad. But then I feel like the other half of the people are like, oh my gosh, there's so many choices. I don't know what to pick. Like I'm all these things.
That's what I'm saying. It's too much. We are on happy, mad, glad, sad level. And then we go into, John, I think what you're saying is, what are you experiencing? Tell me about what's going on for you. And they'll begin to describe what the experience is, and that's what I think we need to make influence on.
And this is my one criticism of manualized, let's say, teams such as CBT or REBT, and that is
cognitive behavioral therapy and
I'm
rational
sorry,
emotive
I owe
therapy.
money
Just,
to
okay.
put that in the jar,
Yeah.
the jargon jar. But is that's kind of reductionist, and sometimes people actually get having forced to be in a certain way of expressing themselves, and so they are not allowed to be themselves, spontaneous,
Genuine and unique in the moment.
right?
Yeah. I've really picked up more and more in my practice the experientially based modalities. The Gestalt. I mean, I don't practice them per se in active sessions.
You don't
but
necessarily do the empty chair, but you get.
But I do, right?
do.
Yeah. It's like having the understanding of what it is that people are experiencing and working with that experience is what I'm really getting at. Because when you get lost in all of the titles and the names you just get overwhelmed. I mean, I think people get more anxious than anything, and that's part of why I'm kind of like, lose the feeling chart. It's because I agree with that guy, and it's helped me so much over the years to get, I think, honestly, more effective at being right here, just right
Present.
here with you and me in this moment.
Okay, so then
and
can
we're
we
gonna
maybe
manage
say that I feel like we're so off topic here, but like
Maybe.
can we say then that the feelings chart, emotions chart, whatever you want to call it, can just be a tool that we pull out when we need to like dig deeper? So maybe not just have it like on your wall or something that you use with everybody. Like, because I remember my own therapy experience when it was first used when I was in therapy. And I was talking about, this was years ago, but I was talking about like something to do with my parents. And I couldn't quite like figure out the word that I wanted to put with how I was feeling.
Yeah.
And then that was the first time she pulled out this like feelings chart and was like, here, like, look at this and see if you can find a word. And I think the word I found, like, I was really feeling embarrassed or whatever.
I don't think.
So just using it in that way, not completely getting it.
Of course,
I have a
there's
hard time letting go.
You're not letting it go.
I
And I don't
let
think
go.
you're going to make a mistake or you're wrong in doing it. I'm going
Right.
to tell you, I'm not going to use it, and I don't use that or go that way. And because I think the direction of being just locked into the moment and being
Yeah.
with the person in that moment. Words, look, some people express non-verbally.
Right.
I mean, Victoria, that is definitely not you and I. Okay, you and I are so verbal in the way that we
Yeah.
we process, we
feel like I'm
talk,
both,
we
but yeah.
think, right? John,
Oh, yeah, I
don't
think
think
out
you
loud.
are as much, right? Like there are people that just are non-verbal in the way that they process emotion, right?
Right.
But they have a very depthy experience, and it doesn't need to be. I think as you went and talked about CBT and RET and all that kind of stuff, it doesn't need to be whittled down into that simplicity. Is it?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So, and for me, it's more in terms of meaning. I'm very meaning oriented. My best work, I felt has been as a therapist, but also as a patient or as a client was, what does that mean to you? What is the purpose? Why? And so it gets into the existential aspects of it. Is there a
Why
purpose?
did you do what you did? What is the purpose behind what you're thinking or doing? What does this mean to you? For therapists out there, like if we are in a stuck spot or we're confused about what's going on, or Victoria, we want to really know what somebody's experiencing or feeling, those are the questions that are go-tos. And people will be sometimes caught flat. But I was asked that in my own therapy work at one point, and I was caught flat with that. I'm like, wow. But I went away from that session, and I did a lot of amazing work on the question that was asked me, what does blank mean to you? And so, yeah, I love that. That's the space where we can really get empowered with regulating and managing the way we're experiencing.
I would love to do psychoanalysis, but that's never going to happen.
What do you mean?
So you have to come in, and it's so expensive. You have to do it multiple times and over a period of
You
years.
mean as a clinician, or
As a clinician and as a client? Yeah.
Well, you could. Why couldn't you? Why couldn't you then?
Well,
I
yeah.
mean, shoot. Are you saying because managed care and insurance just
Managed
is
care.
so limiting?
Yeah.
Yeah. And they have to go by that book.
Yeah. It's
And so you
Sucks.
can't you could
frustrating.
imagine if you could do real depth change, you can't do it in 12 sessions.
right.
It's a process. It's sorry.
No, it's okay. I just look at Chris because we have the same thoughts on EAP,
Oh,
which
yes,
is all like kind of that whole you can't fix like nothing, like not much happens in 3 sessions.
the employee assistance program, which is a
Right.
great way
Yeah.
to engage treatment.
Right.
Get 'em
Mental health
started.
Which is a great way.
services.
Yes, it is
Absolutely
great for like
wonderful.
companies, but nowadays where what did you say that a couple weeks ago? Like the average is 3 sessions,
Right.
Right.
and the first session is the initial intake.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
So
I-
it's basically 2 sessions.
I would really like and compliment Mecklenburg County and Gaston County.
I know where you're going. Go for it. Go ahead.
Because
Spin
what
that
they
up.
do is they have they can get up to 16 visits with EAP, so you could actually get something done with
Right.
with their people.
Like actually makes it.
And
progress.
particularly first responders, they're under an ungodly amount of
Terrible
stress
pressure.
and pressure. They're distrusted a lot of times, or there's a sense that they see where people literally blow their brains out. It's just
Suicide is
suicidal,
a real reality.
and you could see that reflecting on the first responder, feeling that much grief and pain that he or she wants to take his or her own life.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Also, there is a program in place as well with. I don't think it's just specific to Mecklenburg, John. I could be wrong, but standard and routine annual kind of checkup from the neck
I've been
up
doing
to
a bunch of
reality.
those.
I know you have.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a requirement for first responder as well.
Oh,
And
really?
I think it's wonderful. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
Check
awesome,
up
yeah.
from the neck up, man. You go in, you just say hello, you have a relationship. It's one of the best things I've heard in a very, very long time.
A couple of them can be very guarded.
Oh,
Yeah.
you know that.
Yeah.
But even though it does, it gives you a contact point.
Yeah.
It gives you an awareness of something outside of yourself that if you choose to or begin to realize need to tap, it's right there and you can.
I have
it's
a couple of-
added closeness.
Couple of Cleveland County, Lincoln County folks. These are local counties and Meck counties that do this. So and certain,
think it's
some
great.
cities, yeah.
Right. Okay. Let me get
Anyways.
us back on. Let me get us back on track. And I tell you, just because of time, I wanted to let me go through. I think what I want to do then is there was another cool article that I thought was pretty neat, and it was actually about dysregulation. So let me just buzz through these things, and I want to get your all's like where it lands in your minds, and we'll kick it around. Like so, this was talking about not regulating your emotions and stuff, but what really happens when we're in a dysregulated state, which is a fancy way of saying my shit's out and I'm not handling it well, right?
That's basically what it
I'm
means.
stressed out right now. Okay, so basically it means that you can't control what
Right.
it is. In the moment, it feels like your emotions, right? And they had interesting signs of this. They were talking about, people that are living in a dysregulated state. You will see overly intense reactions, impulsive behavior, a lack of emotional awareness, which gets back to what we were talking about, Victoria, with the feeling sheet. Trouble making decisions, inability to manage behavior, and then avoiding difficult emotions. Like these are signs that actually
So if they shut down,
shutting down is a part of that. Yeah. That's a sign that you're dysregulated. And
I would
it
say
was
so.
it was cool to look at that grouping together as an indicator that this person is just dysregulated. And oftentimes, as this is where we should have spent more time, John, where you were talking about that. This is at times with specific mental health conditions. You mentioned brain disease, just brain injury, right?
Oh yeah,
Traumatic brain
TBI, traumatic brain injury. You mentioned
mild, moderate, severe.
yes, and you mentioned a couple other things, but ADHD, autism, bipolar, PTSD. That's the trauma reality. Disruptive mood dysregulation disorder is actually something that's new, and then there was also fetal alcohol syndrome, and I
you
bravely
forgot one.
am adding some things with menopause and andropause. And then really major life changes when you go through major grief and loss experiences. For instance, divorce. It can just be devastating. So when you're experiencing these things, and I know we're not going to have time to go into the diagnostics of what bipolar is and what ADHD
Just
is.
say you even forgot borderline.
We've done that on the show. Yep, that borderline is another really big one. I thought that was on the list.
It is.
But
You just didn't say it.
I just didn't say it.
I was
Thank
going to
you.
say a Madonna song. No.
Thank you for stopping. All right, listen, I want to get to where this lands with you guys, but like those are powerful, powerful experiences where you're in a chronic state of dysregulation. That man, look. Some people have an emotional system, and as a human being, honestly, that's just easy to manage. It is. It's easier to manage. Some people have an emotional system that they've been born with or that they have in their lives or in their bodies that are really difficult.
You have
to
two
manage.
two kiddos. I have three, and
Right.
all three of them of my kiddos are very different. I have one child that is just very, very mild, mellow, wonderful.
Right.
And then I have another one that is very creative, very volatile, and the other one she's mad a lot of times. She's just mad.
She's just mad.
She is just
She's mad or madder. But
tell me what
they're in the
what
same
purpose
family,
that is.
and so you get
Right.
that. So I mean, it's nature, it's nurture, it's the whole kit and caboodle.
It's
Their
a lot
experiences
to it.
yeah.
And it's fascinating. My two kids are very, very different kind of as well. And I'm sure, between the five of our kids, your newborn
have one.
baby is going to be coming into his own emotional experience. Like that's
yeah.
powerful. It's a reality. And honestly, sometimes it is easier than others. It's just harder. There's a whole lot more. And it sucks. But for those of us that are struggling with things like borderline personality disorder or traumatic realities in our lives or a traumatic brain injury or a number of things that really complicate this biologically, I'm sorry, but it's still something that has to be managed.
I was thinking in terms of family dysregulation or an emotional dysregulation, is that there's some children that are in very traumatic inducing situations, and they've suffered a lot of abuse, and they don't develop PTSD. They don't develop
Right.
pathology
Biologically.
biologically. Yeah, they're they're just on a different wavelength.
Well, I think, John, that we process the events, we process what they mean to us. We incur the data into our systems, honestly, like differently. Differently. Genders probably have some differences in the way that we incur data into our systems and what happens internally with that. What did we say, right? What's the experience of what it is that you're seeing? You come at it from a very different experience, and what you pay homage to, what you pay interest in, what you highlight in your memory, like that. There's a lot of study out there about that. You look like you had an interesting facial expression, Victoria.
No, I probably would agree. Yes, with the differences in
There's
male and gender.
yeah. I like to go to the store and hunt. So in other words, I know exactly what I'm going for, and I get it and I go.
It's like the meme where it
Indeed.
compares a man's trip to Target versus a woman's trip to Target, and it's like the line is like directly to like what they need in Target, and then they like leave the store,
Hunt
and then
and
the
get
woman's
is-
is
I
like
got it
up and
mapped
down every aisle and back again.
I got it
like,
mapped
all
out. I know
over.
exactly where I'm going.
Okay,
But
I just don't go.
I
yeah,
just
that's,
tell
see
my
now
husband
this
that
you're
Target will tell
they're
us
the
what I need.
hyper masculine guy.
What's
Yeah.
that, John?
You're hyper masculine.
That I just don't go to because I don't
Yeah,
go to a
yeah.
store. I don't know.
It comes to you.
Well, Amazon, yes.
Yeah,
it
you're an
does.
ambush predator.
I am an ambush predator. Okay. I need to hear
I'm
more of that.
tempted.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Let me get us back on track with wrapping into
Yeah.
what do we really want to do? We recently talked about emotional freedom. So what do we really want to do? I guess our minds. So let me ask you, John and Victoria. Victoria, you're meeting with people all day long. John, you and I as well, right? Like, what do you really want to gear people with? Like, if somebody is to say, okay, Victoria, what do we do to regulate my emotions? What do I do right now, today, please?
Okay, this is what I do, or what I tell people to do, is to expand your knowledge on feelings, like the differences between feelings, so that you can identify them. Because then I always say that if you're able to successfully identify it, then you can actually successfully address it or regulate it.
Okay.
So if you can identify that what you're feeling is embarrassment, then you can successfully regulate like the severity of that or how you handle it.
Okay, but let's say we've identified it, we get it, we know what's going on. What the heck do I do? Like, I feel like people are screaming to learn
Coping skills?
Coping skills, yes, right? John, what say you?
Did I steal your answer?
No. I'm just trying to think. I'm thinking in terms of people that have experienced head injuries and they've developed a traumatic brain injury where they might have more difficulty controlling their emotions and feelings. That doesn't mean that it's not possible. And
Right.
so part of this is to go through a process where one would learn tools to discipline, to de-escalate when one feels that there's an emotions that are just or feelings that are overwhelming. They can see the signs of it and they're able to step back. So and that's not true for everybody. I understand that, but it gives them the opportunity or they have the ability to say, okay, I might not learn it right away, but I can do it and be persistent and be equipped to do that. And that everybody, and so I'm trying to say, I'm not trying to pathologize these things.
Right.
Like PTSD is actually a brain injury in a sense that even though the brain itself's not injured,
Right.
it's there's a misfiring in the brain that it doesn't store the memories properly, and so it goes back into a cycle, gets kick-started back. Well, one can learn to be able to say, okay, I don't have to get in the same place I was before or get more down or more. I have that ability to choose.
I was just listening to you, both of you, and I did some show prep and thought through it, of course, and had the advantage of that. But I was listening to you, and I just went in a completely different direction and just did a little thought experiment to see what kind of comes up as I'm listening to you. And you know what came up is just simply like when you were talking, Victoria, the word connection kind of came up in my mind, connecting on what it is that we're identifying.
Yeah.
And then John, when you were talking, what came up in my little thought experiment is compassion.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if like compassionately connecting
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
truly
Yeah.
with other people, which is in part the way that we're designed to be anyway,
Yeah.
is a goes a long way into helping us to de-escalate and to regulate.
Here's a good thing here to know, because there are so many thousands of people that are bereft because of the war that is now in Israel and
Oh boy, we
Gaza.
should have started off with that. Are you kidding me? Yeah.
Yeah. We need to keep them in our prayers and thoughts, and to be able to, because there's going to be a lot of trauma, emotional trauma, a lot of, and people will be very vulnerable for their mental health, will be impacted by that so negatively.
Right.
And I think, and so when you talk about
Well, I just want to comment
compassion,
as well. Let's not forget about Ukraine. That
yeah,
there are some things that are really buzzing up in the world right now, and
it seems
it is
that way, doesn't
potentially
it?
building to be a tough time. So yeah.
Yeah. So, and we may find ourselves in this possibility of being drawn into conflict. And so those are precarious times, but we need to, and I think that's why it's important to have a fellowship of compassion. That could be your church, your synagogue, your mosque. It could be your temple. It could be just in a group, small groups, process groups, support groups.
I love the word combination, fellowship of compassion. I mean, think about it. You know, whatever you might identify, Victoria, on the list, or you're experiencing in what you pay attention to and pay homage to highlight or whatever,
Okay.
we suck when we are isolated and doing that process on our own alone.
Yeah.
Can I make that bold statement? Like,
Yeah.
that's a dangerous, dangerous place to be when you're isolated in an alone state, trying to internalize all that you're experiencing. It just doesn't work well, guys. We are designed and geared to be connected. And
Companionship,
in that
yeah.
companion, compassionate connection, I think we find real, like, if you hear anything about regulating your emotions, I think this is a great place to land.
You know, I was thinking, because I've been doing some reading. I like adventure readings, real stories,
Are
and
we making fun
yeah.
of
On the YouTube, you got to
Yeah,
see
'cause
John
Sure.
be looking at Victoria.
but the people that get in trouble
Yeah.
go out. They go out alone. They live alone. They're not in a fellowship of a group of people to rely on each other. To be, when one is strong, one can be weak. One can share all that. And there's so many stories of people that want to do things by themselves. They want to hike the Appalachian Trail by themselves.
Solitude is wonderful.
So-
However,
we live together or die alone?
Right. Henry David Thoreau went to Walden, but he did it for a year, and he didn't isolate himself completely, because he would go to Emerson's house to get food and other supplies.
right,
So he didn't live in Walden alone.
complete isolation.
Complete isolation. There was always in a fellowship,
Right.
a relationship.
It's powerful. It's really powerful. I was thinking about, like, even ropes courses. You know, we've probably all come across some of those, and we've talked about them on the show. When you're going across a balance beam, right? I mean, there's a very clear goal to get to the other side, and you need to be holding hands. But people inevitably in a group will try to go across the balance beam alone, one by one, and invariably somebody's going to fall off, and you have to start the ropes course over, right? So you do that with emotions just as much, right? Like connecting and sharing them disables the intensity draw that you get when you're isolated.
I just had that image of going on a balance beam and you're
Right.
going across, and
It's-
in crocodiles. Well, if you go by yourself,
It's
you-
invariable that you're gonna fall. You're
Yeah.
gonna fall.
You-
But you get great stability when you're
with a group.
with
yeah.
a group.
Yeah.
It absolutely is. So I don't know. What else do you have on your list? I mean, that's I prepared gratitude going a long way, and looking at self-talk and how we really get into our thinking and talking in our mind process, and the Adlerian stuff that we talked about. I mean, actually, I did do the last one, relying on others, as emotions can be overwhelming in a storm, whereas others can be sustaining. I didn't know that I created that. I actually did that.
One of my earliest memories was when I had to spend a night away from my mom and dad, and I must have been 5 years old. And I had the coolest first cousin. She was older, Catherine Phasia, loving. And I cried and I cried and I cried, and she came in from her bedroom, and she just sat on the bed with me and held me.
Yeah.
And I felt loved and accepted,
Comfort.
and so I wasn't scared anymore.
Well, I'm going to give you a real story, John, and it involves you.
Okay.
So,
Uh-oh.
the way, I hope you don't mind. I think you'll be okay with this, but it's the way, and I mean this as a compliment, the way that you go about, kind of connecting with people, and you can do this in your life by getting on somebody's level in any way. So we're sharing, right? So when we were moving, right, our office is packing up, and I just had
This is
a
before my
day
time.
I was wore out. Oh, that was before you.
It was before my time
Well,
here.
we were in the other office, Victoria, and we were moving to this office, and I was just, stressed out, I'm sure, and all the moving stuff, and it was the end of the day. I had just done a full day of therapy, and I'll never forget, John, I sat down on the floor, and you were in my office, and I was in mid-sentence, and John gets down on his knees and gets down, and he just sits down on the floor with me. And I looked at him. I was like, "Oh, okay. I know what you're doing." He's like, "Oh, yeah. It's natural. It's just what I do." And I'm like, "John, I really appreciated that, and I appreciate you again. I'll thank you for that in that moment, because it does something, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
There's a humanistic reality and a connection to that, and you gave me a gift that day that that helped me through. That
It was
story.
presence.
Yes,
Yes,
it was presence.
being genuine and they're authentic. Yeah.
The
But I
authentic-
wasn't thinking it that way. I was just thinking I wanted to be with a friend that was tired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was wore out that day,
Yeah.
stressed out, and so do this together, guys. I'll wrap us up and take us out, but closing thoughts for y'all. What are you thinking? Any closing thoughts?
Coping skills. Learn coping skills.
Right.
And
Right.
utilize them. You don't just learn them, you have to utilize
Learn
them.
and use.
Learn and use.
Doesn't always go with assumption.
And I've used this term before, but radical self-acceptance, and that
You
is,
have.
yeah,
Right.
just be kind to yourself.
Listen, this is the human emotional experience which we endeavor to figure out together. And you've heard a good conversation, I think, amongst clinicians that are trying to highlight, the empowerment and the reality of handling these very, very tough things that we deal with all day long, called emotions, right? Like, they feel overwhelming, they feel scary, terrifying, out of control, but they really aren't, especially when you share them and you're with someone. You have a compassionate connection that you can offer your son or daughter or husband or wife or friend, right? So this is something that is manageable. We do have some specifics that can help you get through. So know that emotions are difficult, but they are manageable, and that you can regulate yourself and get through whatever tough time that you might be having out there. So appreciate you guys hanging out with us. John, Victoria, you guys have a great week.
Bye.
Right?
Bye.
Stay well, and we'll see you soon.
I'll see you later. Live long and prosper.
Bye. Take care.
Bye, all.